telling us what your majors were, and what you currently do. I'm also kind of interested to see would you tell us where you're zooming in from? James, you start us off. Yeah.
Hi, I'm James Heidelberger. I graduated in 2020. I was an English major with a computer science minor. I'm currently zooming in from uptown Minneapolis. And I'm sorry, was there another question that I forgot about?
To talk about, like, in a few sentences, what you currently do.
Right, of course. I'm sorry. So currently I am an associate quality assurance project lead at Activision. So what that basically means is I work in video games and I work on finding bugs, reporting bugs. At this point, as an associate project lead, I'm more in charge of creating test cases to try and break down where problem areas might be, focus testing for our employees, and work towards making our games the best that they can be.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Bakken, formerly Sarah Weber when I was a student. I graduated in 2016. Yeah, 2016. I am zooming in from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So that is where I live. And I'm currently a research and instruction librarian at UW Green Bay Libraries. So what that means is basically I help students and staff with research. So that sometimes comes in the form of me coming to classes to help students find research on specific topics for their class. Students are told they need to find a peer-reviewed scholarly article for their assignment, but they have no idea what that is. That's when I come in to teach class and show them how to find that through the library. I also provide research assistance at our research desk and through our chat. So I know Clemens and Alquin have that service as well. So I'm in a similar role to the librarians that you see on St. Ben St. John's campus. So those are the main things I do, but a lot more with librarianship for sure.
Great, thank you. Gabriel.
Hello, everybody. Gabriel Heron. I'm a 2010 grad. I studied philosophy and I made up an independent concentration in sales. So I dabbled in some business courses and put it on my resume as independent concentration in sales because I knew I wanted to go into business. I kind of detected that in my early 20s. And so that's what I studied. And I currently in a lot of things. My day job is Solution Design Group, and I do strategic enterprise sales for technology. It's a pretty complex sales process, typically 12 to 18 month sales cycle, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of complexity, which is really important to me in my craft. I selling a widget that I reposition a widget, and wait, if you look at it from this angle, look at how beautiful this. It's not very interesting. So the complexity of selling has been important to me. And then my wife and I do some impact real estate investing. So we've been investing in real estate for about 15 years. And we do, I've got my family business, which is toboggans, snowshoes, outerwear. My brother's the president of that company. So it's artisan made goods in Minnesota for exploring the outdoors in the winter. And I just grew up in the toboggan company, and then we kind of took it over and acquired a couple of other companies. So I've always worked on a toboggan company since I was 15. It's kind of like the family farm, night and weekends, going back for harvest, metaphorically speaking. And then my wife and I started a nonprofit folk school up in northern Minnesota, Warwood, where I grew up and where we are able to live our summers now since the pandemic. And that's bringing art and culture to rural areas, which is a pretty important passion spot for my wife and I. So those are kind of the irons in the fire.
Great, that's fantastic. I want to open this up too. I can keep asking questions, but your questions are more important than mine. So yes.
I have a question for Gabriel. How did you and your wife come upon starting a nonprofit of bringing arts and culture to rural areas of Minnesota?
Nice. Well, it's, as these things typically start, it starts with my entrepreneurial ADD. You know, when I see an opportunity that speaks to me, I have a hard time not pursuing. I've had to not pursue more and more now that I have 4 kids. My wife and I have 4 kids, 2 to 7. By the way, my wife is a Benny and a philosophy major. And she went to the McNeely Center for Entrepreneurship. But together, it's actually a mentor, and this will be a theme that I want to leave with you guys like 100%, is that we have a thriving alumni base, and you need to go find it, and there's more ways to go find that than when I was in school. And within that journey, I met a gentleman by the name of Paul Shirky, and out of Ely, and he was starting, like, actually my wife and I founded Red Talks, if you guys know what that event is. So that first couple of years when we were framing that up, he was one of the speakers, and I met with him prior to that, and he told me about this folk school concept, and I was just like, what? And so that seed planted. My wife and I, we had 1 or 2 children at the time. We kind of drove around Minnesota, looked at different folk schools, realizing it's this emerging trend. And my wife actually is in the nonprofit space. This is my first foray into nonprofit, and so it was us sharing interest. And you know, we don't watch television, we build stuff, and it became a project. And now we're about 4 or 5 years into it, and it's got some really good traction. So that's, I mean, the cliff notes of how that started.
Wonderful. Are there questions right now? No. Could you tell us a little bit, maybe start with Sarah, to tell us a little bit about what you see as sort of the vocational trajectory, like from the moment you left, like how did you get to where you are? And if I could sort of piggyback something else on it, were there any things, any sort of activities or things that you did as an undergraduate here at CSB SJU that somehow you feel kind of played a role in how you got to where you are now?
Yes. So I forgot, I think when I introduced myself, to mention that I was a history major and an English minor. So there are definitely 2 things that stand out that influenced my career decision. So one of them was just being a history major. I really enjoyed finding research and learning about it. I didn't love the paper writing aspect, but mostly because I was insecure about my writing. But looking back, it was pretty decent. So that played a role, just my niche I loved researching for papers. And then also I got a job my first year working at Clemens Library. So I first was to shelving books, and I started at the circulation desk and then became a student manager. But in the evenings at the desk, when our full-time staff was gone, we would be on chat to answer questions for students. So I really enjoyed helping other students with their research. And going into college, I didn't have like I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be whatever. I didn't have anything starting that I knew I wanted to do. So it was kind of like a lot of exploring and thinking about while I was a student, and then just working at the college helped me a lot. And I would say that like my mentors in college were the library staff who I worked with, who were super nice and supportive and helped answer questions about that. So in order to most library positions, you will need to have a Master's of Library and Information Science master's degree. Where I got mine at UW-Madison. I graduated in May of 2016, and I started at Madison in fall of 2016. So a lot of people, when they are like, a lot of people in the library program were actually like returning from, they were leaving their initial career and going back to school. So I was kind of one of the oddballs who went right away. And I went right away because I felt that if I stopped doing school, I would never go back because I was feeling pretty burnt out. But I was like, just got to keep the momentum going because this is the career I knew I wanted to do. So I feel lucky in that way, that I got started earlier. So when I was in grad school, one of the things that I did was I worked at a lot of different, at UW-Madison, there are like 40 campus libraries. So I worked at in a lot of different kinds of library positions. I even worked at the public library for a while to try and figure out what form of librarianship I wanted to pursue. And then my last semester of grad school, all my classes happened to be online, and there was a job at the public library where I'm from, North Mankato, Minnesota area, that opened up as a teen and outreach librarian. So I did that. And then 7 months later, I got my job at UW Green Bay Libraries because I felt that although I liked working in public libraries, I liked the hours of being an academic librarian better. So I'd have to work evenings or weekends or that kind of thing. So yeah, I've been really happy where I am here.
Great, thanks, Sarah.
Yep.
James?
Excuse me, sorry, I have a bit of a scratchy throat. But for my vocational path, like out of school, I'm gonna be honest, when I was in my senior year, I had no idea what I was gonna do, where to even start. And then to be honest, like my friends were starting to look at jobs and I hadn't even considered it. Like they were applying and I was like, I guess I better get on that. And then actually I was taking a writing and business class with John Kendall. And we were looking up jobs for a hypothetical, assignment or whatever. And I actually stumbled upon a listing for Activision. And I was like, you know what? What's the worst they can say? So I just, even though that my resume, didn't entirely match up with what they wanted, or I didn't have all the experience that they had as like preferred, I decided to just take a chance, send a resume in, and then they were very kind to get back to me and say, you're about 6 months too early. Maybe apply once you're out of school. Then we hit unprecedented times, and things kind of went out the window. And I really didn't know if that was going to be an option. But then like 3 weeks before the year ended, they actually like emailed me back and they're like, hey, you had a very strong resume. Are you still interested in this position? I said, yes, absolutely. And then from there, I've just been really working on getting better at my job, keep on learning new skills, refining processes and more. For things I did in college that like helped, I would say actually the number one thing was actually my on-campus job. I worked in Gretzky, and I ended up being a student lead there. Mostly worked the pizza station, which sounds very odd to say that helped me with my now tech job working in video games or whatever. But a lot of the skills of like assigning out tasks, working with other my peers and giving reviews and updates and feedback. All of that has been really good experience, especially now in my current position where I am more, giving these feedback to my peers and saying, hey, this is where you're doing really great. Unfortunately, like here's some problem areas. This is where we'd like to see you improve. So that'd be my number one thing that I'd say, on campus wise, helped me with my career currently.
Great, thanks, James. Gabriel, I was wondering too, if you have like, what would I say, like a whole stable of things like that you're involved with. And I wonder if in part we could think a bit about how, if you think what's the first thing you really jumped into, unless they happened all at the same time, right? What's the
Yeah.
first thing you jumped into, and how was that how did that transition go?
Yeah.
From an undergrad into that position?
Well, yeah, that is, it's, why is a tree good? That's kind of like there's a lot of ways to answer this question. So what came first? I actually was working on the toboggan company when I was at school. That's purely like, hey, how are we going to retire dad? We've been seeing him work really hard. We don't want our family legacy to go away. So that has been something that, we've been kind of failing forward on for a long time. My brother and I, and so that was just part of it, in school. And, but I still haven't made a dime. That's just more building something. It is a pretty phenomenal brand momentum. You guys will all be very familiar with Northern Goods in the next decade. But all great things take a long time, to be honest with you. As far as my first step out of school, I knew I wanted to go into sales for a couple of reasons. I've always listened to, feedback and opportunities as I grew up. And, there was one observation I made, that there was like this type of person I would run into now and again. They made everybody around them just feel good. They were interested. There was just like this warmth, this essence, this aura that they had. And the irony of it was like, there's a consistency of professional sales. I grew up in a really wealthy family. We just didn't have any money. So financial scarcity is very, very impactful for me. I learned very quickly that money needs to be a secondary goal. Primary goal of money leads to suffering. That's just a universal principle that I've learned firsthand. But creating financial abundance was really important. And hey, if you develop the craft of selling, you've got a lot of options to create abundance. And so that was on my radar. And then I kind of detected and learned that I'm a philosopher. Like, I didn't even know what philosophy was. Like, I read it in my symposium course, and I'm like, holy shit, like, sorry. This speaks to me. This is like, what is this? And I came in early to my symposium professor, and I'm just like, what is this? And she's like, this is moral philosophy. I literally went home and signed up the next day. And that was because I was actually a 21-year-old freshman. So I played junior hockey. So I played hockey at St. John's. I played junior hockey as a 21-year-old freshman. And at that point in my life, I kind of lived in two areas of the country, and kind of realized that I was ready to kind of hunker down for school. And when I came to St. John St. Ben's in symposium, people kept giving that advice. Find something that you're passionate about, pursue that. And that is going to be, the best advice that I can give you. And so I took that to heart. And so I had a philosophy major, and I knew that I wanted to go into business and sales specifically. And this led me to my first role in technology sales, and that was a Johnny Alum. I got that internship that led to a role through meeting somebody who also introduced me to my wife at an alumni event. So the key thing here, and this is, I've actually, Erica and I, we talk quite a bit. I'm very passionate about people who are pulled to humanities and need to study humanities. The issue is, and we have solutions to it now, is helping people translate humanities into a career track. And that translation, and that's something that St. John's just is taking ownership of, that we historically haven't provided the support that we've had. So for me, answering this question is that I showed up to events. I went to the alumni office. I went to career services. Yes, I was a 21-year-old freshman, and a rarity. I actually pulled back my partying when I went to school because the junior hockey is kind of wild. So I was very focused, and I know that's different. It's part of life. But I think what was really important is that internship, got to know alums, and really did a couple of steps to understand how does humanities show up in the workforce, and how is what am I learning now potentially apply to something that's out there. And that's what I did. And that internship led to my first job. And then my current role that I've been at for coming up in 11 years is also through a Johnny connection, who I met while I was working at my internship through the alumni office, supporting alumni volunteers. And this guy, 10 years later, he introduced me to what is a role that's been pretty powerful and impactful in my life.
Thank you. Thanks, Gabriel. This is a great time to leap in with your wildest questions. Or your semi-wild questions. They don't have to be the wildest, I promise. No? Yes, thank you.
Was junior hockey?
Nice. It's college without the school part. No. So junior hockey is it's a step between high school and college hockey. And so it's you play 60 games. Often you're playing in front of a bunch of fans. So it's kind of like it's not really semi-pro, but like it's just you take a gap year or two to just get better at hockey and to be seen. I grew up in Warroad, which is northern Minnesota. And so I've been skating since I was 3, and it's a part of my DNA. So that's the junior hockey answer.
I was thinking I wanted to sort of piggyback onto one of the things, Gabriel, you were talking about in terms of humanities and this process of translation, right? One of the things obviously we see, and this has been happening in higher education for a long time and is becoming kind of even more acute, is a perception that that when you major, it needs to be sort of explicitly vocational, right? Or the pre-professionalism, that if you want to do anything business oriented, you need to major in global business or in accounting, or if you want to do something in computer science, you have to major in computer science, or et cetera. That's et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking too about to take the term you were using, Gabriel, you were saying that you were talking about the importance of translating like the humanities into a career track. And I think I'm wondering if that's like a two-step, like in one sense, there is what do I need to do to take those skills and translate them into my career path, or how do I translate what I do to others, right? Explain to others, like professional employers or what have you, the connections I see. And it could be that the first has to happen, what has to happen first or the other, or and then I want to have Gabriel and then James and Sarah, if you guys could sort of jump into that too. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Let's just add a third leg to that stool. So you said, what do I need to do to translate my skills, right?
Yeah.
So like what type of internal work, and then how do I explain to others? I would add that, well, I guess maybe it answers your first. You need to explore, right? Like, and that's what's so important. Even if your internship sucks and you're like, man, I'm so glad I'm aware of that industry because I'm not going there. Like, that's part of the process. Like, it's 2023. People don't know what the hell they want to do with their lives for the next 30 years. I mean, and if you are, awesome. You are like 5%, but like, don't think that you have to know exactly where you want to go. So I feel like part of that translation is getting some experience. Once you get experience, then you can translate that experience of like, okay, based on this experience and this humanities, now I know how to talk to people who are looking at resumes, how to position myself. So I feel like the key step is to explore with internships and getting to know in the career services and just talking to people. And that kind of self-awareness kind of leads towards the ability to translate.
Wonderful, thank you. Sarah, would you, and by the way, I want to say, as I'm a a history major and then an English major, so the history English nexus is one that's very dear to me. So, uh, a little bit about the ways in which, or the ways in which sort of your studies in English and history seems like maybe like did you have to take extra steps to make that translate into your work in the libraries, or did that seem just like a natural outgrowth, or how would you frame it?
I did feel like the skills I learned. So history and English is very writing and research based, which is how it was like I knew I enjoyed doing that within my major. So like what's a career that was really going to fit that? There are tons of careers that require you to do some form of research and writing, right? So that just happened to work for me. In my library program, there were people from so many different majors and minors and their undergrad studies. And like I said, a lot of people coming back for a second career, which is very, very common. So also thinking about, I wanted to comment too on what Gabriel said, just getting experience doing different things. I found that the most impactful experiences were things I decided that I definitely didn't want to do. So when I was in grad school, I was archivist. The different roles helped me determine like what areas of librarianship I wasn't interested in. So for example, I did this project where I was digitizing a collection for the Center for Limnology, which is the study of freshwater fish. And a lot of that work was me working alone with what's called metadata, describing what's going on in these images. And it was a lot of independent work where I didn't work on a team, where I didn't really communicate with anyone. It was just independent work, and I hated it. It helped me realize that I need to be in a role that I like working with people and with others. And then also helped me think about what other experiences do I need to help build up those skills on my resume. And I'll say too, just something that's really helpful for me is, and probably a lot of other people, is I'm not really good at looking within myself sometimes to realize what I'm good at, and talking to my friends or even having like a professor or somebody, career services, look at your resume. It's almost like it feels like cocky talking about yourself. So just hearing from others and what skills they think you could add to was helpful for me. Especially with my coworkers now, not even for a resume, but just as we're working on a team, they help me identify within a team things I'm good at. So hearing from others too was helpful for me.
Thanks, Sarah. That's
Yep.
great. James.
So yeah, I think the workforce today, it's very interesting that a lot of it isn't as like vocational based as you might think. For example, one of my fellow associate project leads was a history major. One of my bosses, one of my supervisors was a journalism major. And then my direct supervisor didn't even go to college. They just got their high school diploma, and then they just kind of set out. And now they're, a project lead at Activision. And a lot of that is, skill translation and presenting these skills. For me, like I said, I was an English major and a computer science minor. So a lot of people assume they're like, oh, you're a computer science minor. That's the skills that you're using in your job at Activision. And I hate to say it sometimes, but I'm like, a lot of the times it's actually the skills I learned in English classes and my English classes, my humanities classes that I'm using more often. When I was starting out, a lot of my job was, being in game trying to find bugs. But after we found the bugs, we have to write up a whole report to say where we're finding them, how often to do it, what steps are needed to take it. And all of that needs to be very clear so that it can be reproduced consistently, so that the issues can be fixed. And as I've gone up at Activision, that has only become more and more true. I'm of course still using my computer science skills as well, But more and more I'm relying on my communication skills, my ability to communicate clearly, working with teams, attention to detail. And to one of your points, that is a matter of not only like translating your skills, but also knowing how to present your skills. Like Matt said, you know, in my English classes, a lot of times we were doing peer reviews of looking over essays. And while that might not seem like something that can translate super well, that is a great way to say, hey, I have a great experience at attention to detail. I was looking for incorrect grammar. I was looking for areas that can be improved upon, giving feedback. Feedback is a huge thing in my position of, you know, knowing how to give good feedback to people. There have been a couple times where someone messaged me and they're like, hey, can I give you feedback on, you know, X thing that you did? And I was like, sure. And then they just went, it sucked. And I said, okay, that doesn't help me at all. Can you please give me some more information here? So, you know, I do think even if you don't feel like the classes or the clubs or whatever you're participating in, they don't translate to what you would like to do, I think that, you know, looking at the fine details, the soft skills, you know, that's a buzzword that I'm sure that you'll all have heard before, but taking a look at the soft skills behind all these things that you're doing and then seeing how you can apply those to what you would like to do.
I just want to piggyback on that for James. So like James is in the industry. So with my day job, like at the end of the day, what I sell are the services of software development teams. And so very aware of the industry that he's a part of. And ironically, I've heard consistently that liberal arts, humanities majors are top performers within tech teams. And a huge part of that is, what is it? It's humans collaborating to create something. Okay, what helps to optimize that equation of humans collaborating together? Understanding human culture, history, and nuances, and how you engage and communicate. So when you have these people like, you know, and I don't want to like, we need some vocational tracks and technical depth because we need really like brilliant technologists. But very often technologists who have just taken this vocational track, they have these blinders on, and yeah, they deliver like zero bedside manner in delivering feedback. And even if your feedback is 100% accurate, if people don't receive it, it is ineffective. Right. So these are the nuances of the humanities of working with humans, and in the software space, 100%. And the other part is that this vocational track is a bunch of, it's just not reality. Like over half the jobs that are going to exist in 10 years don't exist. Sorry, over half of the top jobs in 10 years don't exist yet. How do you vocationally prepare for jobs that don't exist? The world's changing so quickly, and your ability to problem solve, critically think, understand how to work with humans, that's the differentiator. And I think it's a really important that, yes, there's a lot of this buzzwords about vocations, but like it's not really reality. But I'm gonna hop off my soapbox for a second because I just wanted to piggyback on that.
Yes. So how do you deal with parents and just general adults in your life who are more stuck in like that same way of thinking, like, hey, you gotta do the vocational thing because what are you gonna do with the English major? You already learned English your first 18 years of life, so yeah.
Well, you can have them call me is one option. We're trying to set up a structure within the alumni base so that we can have that kind of phone a friend, because honestly, if the amount of people who have told me like, oh, you studied philosophy, gosh, I love philosophy, like, but you know, what was I going to do? Or my parents weren't able to let me, like, these are people regretting it, right? And that's the issue. It's the issue of people have a belief about something they don't understand. So this is where arming and coming with data for your parents, and you know, the resources that are being developed within CSBSJU to help you just counter that. But like, end of the day, philosophy majors make more money than their peers within their first 10 years out of school. We have a tougher time getting that initial job because of this translation, but we tend to be leaders and we tend to be put into complex decision-making positions. So it's just like, it actually, you're not spending all this money just so you can get a job as easy as possible that first year. You're talking about setting yourself up for a lifetime of fulfillment and contribution and whatever financial outcomes you want. And that doesn't always translate to what's the easiest way to get your first job. And that's the problem. And I think getting support and talking points, because if any of you love this human nature course that you're part of, or this creative nonfiction, and that your heart's flickering a little bit, and like when you're reading this, like, you need to study this stuff. You need to be honest to yourself. And whoever is telling you that you shouldn't is misinformed, and you have resources to address that conversation. But hey, if you're not flickering and you want to get out of philosophy because you need a bit more like solidified, concepts in your thinking, that's also great too. I'm not here to convert people. Just activate the people who've detected that the humanities is something that's a part of them.
Yes, Sarah.
I feel like I'm speaking a little bit from my ivory tower because my parents didn't care what major I did, mostly because I come from a really big family and it was a lot of, they weren't paying that close attention. But I did have a lot of friends who had that problem because they wanted to major in history, or because they knew I was a history major, and they're like, oh, you're so lucky. My parents don't want me to do that. But I would say to them at the end of the day, and it might be hard, but setting a boundary, and it's your life and this is your career, it's not going to be theirs. So it could be very hard to make that stance. And of course it would help to back it up with the things that Gabriel said. So I'm really glad there's something within the alumni network working with that. But yeah, just personal advice. It's your life and you're going to be the one living with it. So
James, do you have a take on this?
A little bit. I was also very lucky, like Sarah, in that my parents didn't super care that I was an English major. Although my mom was really trying to get me to bump up to a comp sci double major. My poor parents, unfortunately, at this point, they are 4 out of 5 on English majors for college, so they've gone through it. Hey, we all like reading a lot, so. But that aside, I did experience this a little bit when I did find this job. As a base QA tester, I was telling my parents about, I was really excited about this opportunity, and my mom literally was like, so maybe don't quit Target yet. She's like, there's no way, this is just a job for you playing video games. You're either gonna hate it or you're gonna just drop out of it. Maybe, don't tell Target you've quit. Just be like, I just need some more time after college, whatever. And it was just like Sarah said, like Gabriel said, a conversation of talking about, this isn't just a fun thing. This is a real job, and just setting boundaries, like Sarah said. But then also just in general, if your parents are stressed about you being an English major or a philosophy major or a history major, any of these more like not STEM majors essentially. Like Sarah said, it's your life. Do what you enjoy. If you're passionate about something, I find that you work a lot harder to do something well. And when you do something well, then that is best to then show other people what you can do. So you can struggle through a chemistry major, but if you're not super passionate about it, then you're maybe not doing your best work, and then that reflects later down the line. But if you're really passionate about, for me, it was English, and can show these skills of, no, this is what I can do when I enjoy what I'm doing, and I would like to do that here, I think you're in a great spot.
Nice. This is really important. I think that it is there is a reality. So I also, my dad, like my parents, was a really much of a free range parenting, which I just cherish. And it was like, hey dad, I'm gonna be a philosophy major. Like, and I told him, I was like, well, sounds like you really thought it through, Gabriel. I'm excited for you. I realize if your parents are flipping the bill, right? And maybe you got some A-type personalities, parents who are watching too much news and like all this stuff, right? Like you're going to need to overcome objections from your parents. What I really want you to take away from is that if you are in that situation, use the resources. We can help you. And I think what they need to do is they need to get the right information, because they don't have the right information. And one thing you will find in this world as you step out, especially if you study humanities, like we're just this tribal animal that just falls into groupthink. And unfortunately, groupthink is wrong. If
Yeah.
the masses know it vehemently, it's typically wrong. And so this is one of those instances of this vocational track, humanities, BRISA, BS. It's just not reality. The data is not there. It's a marketing problem, and we can help you market and you know, present that argument. Oh, by the way, philosophy is pretty handy when it comes to argument development.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that. I talk to my coworkers all the time about like how thankful I am that I don't come to work, and I mean, who likes getting up in the morning for work? But I don't come to work and dread my life because I hate my job. I'm also a mom. My daughter is 2, and if I'm going to be spending 40 hours a week away from her and not being home with her, it better be something I enjoy doing and that I personally feel is making an impact in this world. So that's just my little soapbox of like the work-life balance and enjoying what you do.
Yes.
This is a question probably more for Gabriel, but since you have so many different commitments going on at once, how do you budget your time between all of them?
Nice. I lean on my philosophy skill set that allows me to weed through complexity and find the signal through the noise. Part of the craft of salesmanship is time management. No matter how much money you have and how brilliant and whatever an individual is, they still have 24 hours in a day. And so part of I would put in the category, well, definitely humanities of just but in kind of a realm of ethics of like self-understanding and what are your priorities. And so I have very, very clear, so I'm 38 and I have done a lot of work on what my life is about and why I'm here and the contribution that I want to make. And with that, I have pretty, you know, I don't say ruthless, but like pretty intense prioritization. And really it comes down to 3 things of I take care of my mind, body, spirit. You know, I can't be anything to anyone or to the world until I take care of myself. My family, I said I have 4 kids. I coach hockey, like it's intense, or getting into like first grader, kindergarten. Family is absolute top priority, and I build stuff. And so I line up the work that I do. So the work at SDG and the work with Northern Goods and with kind of the real estate deals, and then also kind of this nonprofit space. It's a lot of the same activity. It's a lot of the same mindset. But you know, yeah, actually that was how I'd answer that. I probably could talk to you for an hour on it, but it's not like it's perfect, and it's all about prioritization and knowing what you're about and knowing how you want to spend your time and being intentional about it.
Great question. Other questions? These guys are so mean, so like, be careful. Don't ask anything, you know, make sure. No? Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just jump into on this business of the of doing something that you feel is meaningful in some way. And I this is I also learned from jobs that I soon realized were not for me. I worked as an archivist in college for 2 years, and part of it I thought, this is cool. I love looking through this stuff. They give me a collection and say this professor of anthropology died. We've got 52 boxes of his stuff. What's in there? Like, can you catalog it? And I learned at that point too that I wasn't functioning like an archivist, because you're supposed to go through, quickly ascertain what's there, make lists, catalog, and I would just want to sit and read everything in there, right? And so that was closer to, for me, that was closer to my historian training than, I thought, okay, that was a path that I was thinking about. And then working for 2 summers in a law firm, which was one of the sort of possible careers I had thought for myself. Maybe I'll go to law school. And it may have been the firm that I worked at, but the number of people there who seemed so tremendously stressed at every moment of the day in their work schedule. And not to say that there are lots of attorneys who don't live that way, but I saw that and I don't think I want to go into corporate like legal defense work. That's really stressful for me. Sarah.
It's funny you talked about the archive thing, because when I was a history major, so part of I should explain, Master of Library and Information Science has a huge umbrella, and that degree, a lot of people don't end up working in libraries. Some can be IT, design, some people work for hospitals. There's a whole bunch of different areas that you can work. I took a more traditional route, but one position or area under that umbrella is working in an archive. And from a history major too, I thought I enjoyed looking at archival information. I thought I was going to be an archivist. I went into my first semester and did an intro to archives class, which is also where I met my husband. So, I mean, I'm glad I took the class, but again, I realized that maybe the archivist route wasn't for me. Maybe unless I was helping people with research in an archive, but the whole like back end of it of like cataloging and the independent work, I figured out wasn't for me. But I kind of talked about this a little bit later, but one thing I really enjoy about my career and my job is my work-life balance. When I go home at 4:30, I'm not checking my email. I don't have a job. Like my sister, I know, and her career is really struggling with that. She's being called at like all hours of the night to do stuff because she also works for a company that's some of the people are in China. So it's like this constant imbalance for her. And I just really value that I can go home at 4:30. If something comes up with my child, like it's okay. So also, if you do find yourself in a career where it's hectic and you aren't finding that balance, like there are other things out there for you that can help with that. Even if it might be scary to leave your job or work for a different company, change your career. Just for my own mental health, it's good for me to have that.
Can you guys raise your hands? Who has their major selected? Okay, so about half of you. Okay.
Probably about 85%.
Oh, is it 80? Okay, I'm not. And how many of you have that a major in humanities of that?
1.
2, 3. Okay. It just gives me an understanding. And then so that would be about what, like 6 of you don't have a major selection yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Helps me understand the audience.
Good.
Yeah, what's helpful? There's 10 minutes, like what's getting in the way, with as you look at career, are you interested in humanities in a way, but like there's something getting in the way, looking for some specific questions out there. Be courageous.
I wanted just to jump in and say, that's a great sales question. Well, okay, wait, I want to know the audience, right? Where are they coming from? What are the motivations, right? See how this is all, like, the method behind this, how it all comes out? Yes.
I would just say like money, honestly. You see all the time, so like I think the worst paying majors are like philosophy, English, online, like all the time across like the news.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's wrong. It's not true. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you, it's not true. It's like if you're talking about the lifetime earning potential per major, that is not real. What it might be is because of this translation issue, that sometimes people have to kind of have the first job philosophy majors is a tricky one, but especially at St. John's, like we've got some really invested alums and faculty supporting that. But it's not true. It's what the news says. As I stated before, philosophy majors make more money. Like it's those that go into business specifically. So yes, if you go into academia and these other areas, there's a pay scale based on what track you go. But in kind of the business world, that falls in the realm of common knowledge that isn't true.
Yes.
I guess then why does the media choose to kind of like skew the statistics?
Dude, you should come out and try to answer that question and monetize it, because then you'll have a building named after you on this campus. Dude, like news isn't the business of making money for sensationalizing information. News is not a fact-based information transfer. Yes, there are some journalists and there are some news outlets who still have that ethic of like, my job is to create transparency so that the world can make judgments on their own. Unfortunately, the only way that somebody is on the news and the only way that some news program gets a slot is if they attract eyes and they can pay for advertisement. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, to get eyes is negative information, sensational information where people aren't thinking, and they're attracted through the reptilian brain, and they're attracted to negative information. So I'm just like, this is a great life lesson. News is a data source, not a truth source. And within that, truth needs to be part of your work of aggregating different data sources, your own experience, and making your own decisions. And regardless of what major you have at St. John's, you're going to be well equipped to find truth for yourself, because it sure as hell isn't coming from the news.
I can jump in. Oh,
Yeah, I would just add, just to say, I think too, and I might be wrong about this, Gabriel, but when I look and when I see this kind of data coming out, it tends to be about what people are making salary wise in the first, second, or third year. And it's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easiest data that people can get a hold of, because universities people are tracking that information. And so it's sort of cheap data, cheap information. It feeds a sort of a concern that people have, but the broader scale that you're talking about across the course of a career, that's not as easy to pluck that information cheaply from somewhere so it doesn't get out there.
Oh yes, using data to create your own argument. It's just this common function of like, there's probably some logical fallacy that Erica can tell you that falls in line from logic. Sarah has her hand up. I've been talking a lot.
I was going to say, I enjoyed your question, because one of the huge parts of my job in teaching is information literacy, and that's basically teaching people how to find accurate information. So one of the things I talk about too is very related to this, and I talk with students about how there's sensationalized news, and a big problem with news sources, like we were talking about, is not revealing the whole picture and not explaining it fully. So, I mean, there are definitely ways and skills. You can ask your librarian on campus how to help you with that. But yeah, it's definitely a skill to weed through information. This isn't really related to your career, more just like a librarian. I feel obligated to comment on that.
Too, don't forget, XPE can help you. If you want to know what are our alums who are philosophy majors, history majors, English majors, etc., like LinkedIn, for example, is a great source. You can look up alums on LinkedIn, and you can specify philosophy majors, history majors, English majors. You can see actual alums, these real humans, their actual titles. So you can see, like, this isn't like a hypothetical, well, they might be doing these are actual, like, these fabulous humans are all on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so are others, and you can see, here's their actual job titles, they have jobs, and they
Yeah.
are making a salary. So if you want. Like data, like information literacy, but also if you wanna know specifically what our alums are doing, we can help you look at that too.
I wanted to say, Sarah, James, Gabriel, we're so grateful that you're joining us. This is a wonderful conversation and we appreciate it. This was a bright spot in my morning. I didn't expect to be so excited about this, and now I'm all riled up. So, can we all